QCLs have become very important is that in the wavelength region in which the QCLs operate, which is from roughly 3.5 microns and longer, these are the only semiconductor lasers which can operate in continuous wave mode at room temperature. That having been said, for CW room temperature operation, in a hermetically sealed QCL package with beam collimating optics, today we are able to provide upwards of 4 watts of power, continuous wave power at 4.6 microns, more than 2.5 watts at 4 microns, and 1.4 watts at 7.1 and 2.0 watt at 9.3 microns. These are typical numbers. What I'm trying to point out here is that all the available wavelength range from roughly 3.5 microns and longer, we are in a position to provide substantially high amount of power from QCLs that operate at room temperature. Now this is continuous wave power. One can also operate these quantum cascade QCLs in what we call quasi-CW mode. This is pulsed operation, but roughly 50% duty cycle. So for many practical applications, this looks just like continuous wave output. The big advantage is that in QCW mode, you do not need a thermoelectric cooler for maintaining the temperature of the QCL. So the entire application and packaging issues become infinitely simpler. The reason for that is very simple. Because of the structure of the QCLs, it is possible to remove the heat from the active region in between the pulses. So in between the, let's say 500 nanosecond pulses coming at 1 megahertz repetition rate, there is enough time to remove the heat from the active region. So one can operate these devices at room temperature without thermoelectric coolers. Again, in hermetically sealed packages with, as I said, no TEC, with beam collimating optics, one can get substantial amount of power outputs as shown here at the 4 wavelengths that I had mentioned earlier. I will return to this issue a little bit later, but I'll point out right now that uncooled QCLs, because they don't have TECs, are very important for handheld and battery operated applications. We all know that TECs require substantial amount of power to operate. For every 1 watt of heat that it removes, it probably consumes 3 to 4 times as much heat, as much electrical power. So for battery operated and handheld applications, you clearly want to have something that does not have thermoelectric coolers. Something I did not mention earlier is the wall plug efficiency. Turns out to be very important. And you look at the numbers which are quoted there, again these are for fully packaged devices. For Fabry-Perot QCLs, in continuous wave room temperature operation, we have efficiencies greater than 10% at all the wavelengths that we have explored for high powers. And under quasi-CW operation, the efficiencies are in the 7 to 12%. Recall that because quasi-CW operation does not require a thermoelectric cooler, those efficiency numbers, 7 to 12%, are real system level efficiency. That's the electrical power, only electrical power that you need to make these lasers operate. Just a long list of wavelengths at which we have explored operation. Not at all wavelengths we have looked at high power operation, but this sort of reminds you that by changing the structure, the thickness of the active layer, or the thickness of the quantum well, one can change the wavelength from anywhere from roughly 3.5 microns to roughly 12 microns. And we have also made QCLs at wavelengths as long as 16 microns. Of course, many of you are familiar with the fact that QCLs will also operate in the terahertz region. So the green numbers are for Fabry-Perot devices. The red numbers are for tunable devices made out of QCLs by having a wavelength selective element inside the optical cavity. I'll return to the tunable lasers in a little while, but suffices to say that one can have tunable radiation anywhere in the 3.5 to roughly 12 micron region as we have demonstrated so far. And that's what makes quantum cascade lasers incredibly important. There are very few sources, if any, that will cover this kind of region, providing room temperature, continuous wave power output. This is my personal view and maybe somewhat biased view of why QCLs are important. I've listed on this slide other mid-wave and long-wave infrared sources. QCLs are at the bottom in blue, but we are aware of optical parametric oscillators, optically pumped semiconductors, optically pumped the doped zinc selenide and zinc sulfides, carbon dioxide lasers. All of these have been around for quite some time, but they all have some shortcomings. Most important shortcoming of many of the optically pumped systems is that they require another laser to produce the laser action that you want. The result of that is more often than not, the wall plug efficiency is not quite as high. Often one requires cryogenic cooling. CO2 lasers are great. I can say that because I invented them. They're really great. They do wonderful things, provide kilowatts of power, good wall plug efficiency, but they cover only 9 microns to 11 microns, and they don't provide tunable radiation. So in some sense, there is power, but not the flexibility. You come to QCLs, these are semiconductor lasers, electrically pumped, wavelength anywhere between 3.5 to terahertz region, demonstrated powers in excess of 4 watts, and wall plug efficiency almost approaching 20%. So clearly that's what makes QCLs important for many applications, and I will return to the applications fairly shortly. I mentioned quantum cascade lasers. You make a chip, but chip by itself is not terribly useful. It's got to be packaged somehow. Light output from the chip would come out in a fan roughly 90 degrees by 60 degrees because the active region is very small, and so you need to have a beam collimating, some kind of beam collimating optics very close to the exit facet. We do all of that, package the entire device in a butterfly package as you see there, and you put it on a mount which is cooled with just a fan. So this is a room temperature operated system on an air-cooled mount. One can package all of this into for a tabletop system as you see here. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the critical applications of these high-powered devices in Fabry-Perot mode is the directional infrared countermeasures to protect airplanes from shoulder-fired missiles. Not destroy the missiles that come at you, but to confuse them and make them go away somewhere else. So you don't need enormous amount of power, but you need power at the right wavelengths and being able to modulate them appropriately. For the directional infrared countermeasure applications, we can provide OEM modules as shown here. One of the great things about what I've said so far, I forgot to mention, is that the power levels that I've quoted are for single transverse mode output. So these are fairly narrow devices, and you see a output beam pattern on the right hand side. M square, the beam quality, is very close to 1, implying that the output is truly Gaussian in both axes, vertical and horizontal axes. I will return to the fact that these lasers have fairly long, very long lifetimes. We haven't had enough time, nor we know enough about the physics of QCLs. Surprisingly enough, we don't know enough about physics of QCLs to design an experiment to carry out accelerated testing. So right now, so far, all the lifetime tests has been done in real time, which of course takes a long time. So, so far, so much about the continuous wave devices, which I mentioned earlier, require TECs, thermoelectric coolers. I mentioned very briefly uncooled high-power QCLs. These are the quasi-CW operation. And for battery-operated applications, you don't have too much power, so you don't want TEC. And so this mode of operation turns out to be very important. And the next slide shows